Please forgive me if you address this in the zoning. Can you address what you think some of the biggest mistakes are that that people make when they first start to get into apologetics? Things that really should be avoided, common behaviors, common attitudes or beliefs.
Let me mention one thing that I kind of put on the handout, but I didn't really comment on. It kind of drives me nuts when kind of a novice apologist constantly wants to reinvent the wheel. Because oftentimes they're not familiar with the issue, and so they assume there's no answer out there. And so they try to come up with an answer out of whole cloth. Well, that's fine if you know you're doing that. It's fine if you're trying to improve on existing answers and using those as a starting point. But instead of flailing around, it's better to see what people have already done and build upon that. And so that, in fact, that's kind of why we started the Fair and Topical Guide. Because every 6 months, the same questions would come up, and people would try to write new answers out of whole cloth, without taking into account the good answers that had already been crafted. So that was one thing that jumped into my mind.
I think that one of the problems that I've seen, like in some of the message boards, new apologists jump on and they're on fire right away and come out almost swinging, and that doesn't set a stage for any discussion any more than anti-Mormonism does. And I think we need to approach it from a scholarly perspective. And it's not it becomes an emotional issue, but it shouldn't be. It should be a scholarly issue in order to have no contention, have a spirit present.
And I'll just add, if you want to have a discussion directly with a critic, like on a message board, you should do so from a position of strength, not from a position of ignorance. And it's so often that you see, as Mike said, you see some young apologist get on and start swinging, but it's like flailing blindly, and he doesn't realize that he's making silly arguments and he doesn't understand what he's doing. So you need to have a foundation of knowledge before you start trying to have a discussion directly with the critic.
To tie into that last comment, though, do we want to give the impression to the beginning apologists that they need to be experts in everything before they get started, or can we still rely somewhat on the power of personal testimony and be able to address an issue? Because I don't, there's a lot of anti-Mormonism out there, but it's really not all that sophisticated. There's pockets of sophistication, but oftentimes just a pure testimony can really have some powerful influences there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like joining the church. I mean, you don't have to know everything to get baptized, and you're right. Don't despair if you're a novice apologist. You don't have to know everything. In going over this literature, I kind of wanted to make the point that it's not that you have to know everything, which is, of course, impossible. But it is useful to have a handle, wrap your arms around the literature, and have an idea where to find things. Now, in terms of just pure testimony, that's fine. You can bear your testimony to someone and end the discussion. But if you want to continue the discussion and have a give and take, then you do need to. I mean, most people who are not members of the church are going to need more than just a bare testimony.
To also say that it's okay to say I don't know the answer. I can find out. I have some friends, or I want to check in some resources. And so stick with the things that you have strengths on. If you're learning apologetics, there's probably some areas that you've done a little bit of research on. Stick with those. If somebody hits you up with a tough topic, don't try to make up something, because that makes it look worse. Find out some answers.
We mentioned many options and opportunities to learn and to grow with scholarship. As far as we know that time is an essence in today's society, and you've given some beginning points. But for those who are really wanting to learn and get into these things, how is it that you best learn to budget your time so that you could have scholarship in your life as well as work and other obligations that allowed you to progress to knowing things such as that?
That's a tough one, the budget time. you have to give up something to gain something else. So, what are you going to sacrifice? And obviously, we don't want to sacrifice more important things, time to our family and reading the scriptures and so forth. But maybe it's giving up TV or giving up going to movies or whatever the case may be. That's a tough juggling act.
And I think part of it is motivation. If you're motivated, you'll be able to arrange your affairs to continue to study. And if you're not motivated, it's not going to happen. You're going to want to go to the movies. So.
Hugh Nibley? I've got to expand that. In my experience, it goes from people believing that he's the greatest scholar that has ever lived to the point where people dismiss him out of hand. Will you address that?
Well, my personal thoughts on that is that Hugh Nibley is kind of a pioneer. He set up the stage for many other scholars to work under. Not everything that he has written is proved to be 100% accurate, but he's opened up some doors, cracked open some doors that other scholars have explored and found other interesting things. And I think overall, he's an astounding man and he has produced a variety of topics, a lot of great scholarship.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I honestly don't even read much Nibley anymore because I've read, virtually all of it. And I just don't feel the need to read it anymore. I mean, I've got that foundation. And other scholars have built on that. It's more, what he started is now more developed. And so I tend to focus on that literature. But if you haven't been exposed to Hugh Nibley, then I think that exposure is a very worthwhile thing. And Farms is kind of the Hugh Nibley legacy in action. And so I think you'll find most people who are fans of Farms tend to be bibliophiles, and I would put myself in that category.
Hi guys. I'm sure you're familiar with Grant Palmer's book, An Insider's View of Mormon Origins. Now, some of the stuff in there regarding, for example, the mode of translation that Joseph used, the evolution of the first vision, reflects very closely, it seems, almost verbatim in some places, what might appear in anti-Mormon books. So if it so closely reflects those things, I was wondering why, or is, the material in Palmer's book, would that be considered anti-Mormon too? And if not, why? Is it the way it's presented? I'm trying to get a handle on that.
It's hard for me to respond to that because I know the book exists. I have not read it. And so unlike anti-Mormons, I'm hesitant to comment on a book I have not read. So I'm seriously, I have to read it to make that kind of nuanced judgment.
I apologize. I was 20 minutes late, and if you've already done this, that's all right. Can you give us a success story of where you've been involved in extended, over a period of time, friendly argument with non-Latter-day Saint and been successful in at least changing their view of the church, and maybe even preparing the way for them to see the missionaries?
Richard's here. Richard came here.
Throwing my 2 cents on that real quickly. Because I have the Mormon Fortress website, I get quite a few emails from critics and from Latter-day Saints. And I had an email about a year ago from a gentleman who said that he was teetering on the verge of the church, and through several websites, including my own, he found some answers that made him feel that some of these arguments were not the correct arguments, and he felt in the spirit again and stayed in church. I had another lady who lived in Spain email me, and she was not a critic, but she was investigating the church, and her entire family pretty much was against her investigating the church, as was her fiance. And we had discussions for many months, and she ended up taking missionary discussions and was baptized, and her family disowned her, her fiance left her, and she said that those things were all obviously very painful. She struggled through all of them, but she knew through the Spirit that it was true. And I think that part of the reason was because she had plausible arguments that contradicted what the anti-Mormons were claiming.
Yeah, on the fair view list, we get emails on a regular basis from people just, it's almost embarrassing, almost on their knees thanking us for what we've done and for how helpful it has been. I'll also point out that some of those success stories are actually in this room. I'm not going to embarrass them by pointing to them, but there are people in this room who were even critics of the church who are now faithful members. And so there are plenty of success stories. And I think that's our thing.
Thank you very much.